Gwni cor yn geidal sias gyda mil y magias ac dan 14 ffôl sias sy'n y darysif rhwm hein rydd mae fan ceile sydd san y toi tias dy lym. Tho 14 ochas ar yn fen sias liv Tronona yn Melbourne agos ta sŵlam gywilsif agos ta'n commissioner gywilsif ik wy'n chanaf os yn ocoed ciliwrach sias. Han wydyn sian ag Swiss le sioctan ac is feder la mara gor an falcha fwn wytein Sabinas me fein fishe gohianta. Dear friends and our Cordial Island, dear friends of Ireland, may I say what a great pleasure it is to be here this evening. We've had a wonderful visit to Australia, but here in Melbourne to see so many of you of the Irish community and so many of their friends gathered here gives both Sabina and I and those travelling with me the greatest pleasure. May I, as I have in all of the speeches I've given since I arrived just over a week ago, may I begin by acknowledging that we meet today in the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people, and may I thus pay my respect to their elders, both past and present. The Irish nation stretches far beyond the boundaries of our small island state, and regularly, indeed, and with authenticity, I'll say that there have always been more people abroad than at home in Ireland. And it is the case here. Checking before I came, there are in fact actually 16,000 people who were born in Ireland living in Melbourne. There are 90,000 people in Australia who were born in Ireland living in different parts of Australia. There are 2 million people, it's just gone over 2 million people I think, who suggest that they have Irish heritage. Ours is a very old relationship, the relationship between Ireland and Australia. And it's rich in the different streams and the different circumstances in which Irish people have come. I think that when we were preparing for this trip, we felt it very important to visit as many of the Irish community in Australia as we could. So that's quite early tomorrow morning, Sabina and I, and the others we leave for Hobart. And then we move on to Canberra, and then we will be, I think, in Sydney, then we're in Brisbane, and then we're in Warwick, then we're, and so on. All I can say is that, and I think back on it about how important it is. And today, I was very, very moved to meet those who are looking after the Irish and who have been running different welfare services for them. May I begin by acknowledging is Míle Mawícas a Gwálib. If I speak Irish as well, remember I think that it was the language I think of my grandfather's brother and sister who emigrated on the Montmorency in the 8th of April 1862, just after the Land Act. So they went on from sheep to cattle, I think. But one of the things, may I say, that I want to acknowledge and thank all of you here, because and those of you who have come here, I want to thank you for not just the warmth of the reception you've given me, but for what you do for the Irish community and for your endeavours for Ireland and for Australia. I think that what you do to help each other, to support your homeland in so many ways, are very much valued ambassadors for Ireland. Sometimes when I was preparing the speeches, I was looking at something that was strange, and that was at the 1880s, when the Irish really are at their peak in Australia. There were 100,000 letters a month came in both directions. It cost 6 pence to send a letter at the time, and sometimes it took 8 months for it to arrive. So thus that old song about a letter from my son in America could have been a letter from my son or daughter in Australia. I think that what is very, very important is that we realise that today the Irish are appreciated for the contribution that they're making. In all of the formal meetings that I've had, every leader that I've spoken to has spoken about how the Irish presence is valued in Australia. They've spoken not only about the influence of the Irish in the past, but the wonderful present, the creative Irish who are now making their contribution in the contemporary period. I think it's very important that this friendship, which is multi-stranded, I hope that it is deepened by my visit here. it's in every aspect of life. Earlier yesterday, I was receiving an honorary doctorate from the University of Melbourne, and I spoke about some of what you might call those the people who came very early on, and they made contributions in politics and law and industry and to the academy. There was a very particular version of the Catholic Church here, led by Archbishop Mannix, who resisted all movements to have him moved, and who had a very, very particular view in relation to war and conscription, and who had a very, very pithy comment to make about Billy Hughes, who had criticised him for losing the referendum in 1917. I think that the development of the Irish settlements, and as they came to be in Australia, led to strong communities. And I think I was very, very struck by the history and development of Melbourne and the state of Victoria. The Irish, I spoke in the university yesterday about William Edward Hearn. William Edward Hearn was of the 4 professors who established Melbourne University, 3 were from Ireland. William Edward Hearn was a professor of Greek at Queen's College, later to become University College Galway, and then NUI Galway, and so on. And it's very interesting is that he had to teach not only moral and political economy, but also logic, moral philosophy. And then because one of the 4 died on the way, he had to take over mathematics as well. It was a long journey at the time. And then there was, of course, is that this is not to say, of course, the importance of one of the founding fathers of Melbourne, Sir Edmund Barry. Maybe one of the people I think that maybe the most emotional passage in my speech last night was when I quoted James Fenton Lawler, who was responding really to what had happened to his people at the time of the famine, opening a great phrase in his letter he wrote to the Irish Fenian by saying, "I am not going to defend the rights of 8,000 people who are excluding the rights of 1 million people, or instead those, for example, who simply wanted a house and who are being offered the alternative of a workhouse." His brother, Peter Lawler, former Speaker of the Parliament of Victoria, rose to that position by a very particular path. It was his escape from the authorities, following his leadership, of course, of the Eureka stockade. It's very interesting. I won't have time to visit all of the places this time. This is one of the difficulties that I visited. But over in another part of Australia, I would have liked to have gone to visit that tree where the shearers, for example, set off their great dispute of 1891, which was supported by the marine workers and which led to the foundation of the trade union movement. But the Eureka Uprising is regarded by many historians as the founding of Australian democracy. And I think it is one of the witnesses the Goldfields Commission claimed that of the rebels on the day, quite half of them were Irishmen. I've mentioned Archbishop Mannix. Every now and again I called him Cardinal Mannix, but there was never any danger that he would ever be made a cardinal because of his consistent support in relation, and particularly after 1916. But his 50 years at the helm of the Catholic Church was a very, very, very significant one. And indeed I remember as a child visiting my mother's people in County Cork, of the different images the people had. First of all, people in Cork that time would say that John Mitchell's journal was in every house, but also there were photographs, there were images of Cardinal Mannix, and I saw 2 of them this afternoon when I was visiting the Irish here. I think that what's very, very important is that I'm thinking of today, and may I say that those who are visiting at the bureau that helps, if you like, that helps the Irish, which is a very, very important. It's a very, very important. The Irish Australian Support and Resource Bureau. Could I just say that I hope that all of you will assist that bureau. I think it's doing very, very, very important work. During the time I was running for president, and in my time as president, I visited the Irish in many different circumstances. And as people grow older, and as the circumstances in which they're living change, they need our support And I know that my recommendation as President of Government is that it happen and that it be strengthened. I do want to thank all of you for the contribution you're making. It's very interesting to Australia itself. It is very striking that the Irish of different generations, and particularly the Irish we met the other Sunday, and while I'm at it, may I congratulate Victoria on winning the final of the women's football. Thank you very much. Dignity was saved for Western Australia in the hurling, but we won't say anything about that. But at any event, anyway, what was very interesting is what is such a pleasure to meet these young, articulate women and men, and when they speak about Australia, they have no hesitation in saying that they're both Australian, and Australian in a way that doesn't ask them to forget for a second their Irish heritage. And as well as that, in relation to the contribution, speaking in Irish, as many people have were to me, just reminded me as well that one of the reasons why I've acknowledged the first inhabitants of this place, who have a culture that is 65,000 years old, means that people who respect their own culture can respect every other culture. And I want to express my deepest appreciation of all of the groups and individuals who work in this region, who promote Irish culture and who are organising so many things. The Celtic Club, been a home from home for many within the Irish community, and may I wish that now that you have, as was said, realised your property, that you go on to make even bigger and better premises in the interest of the Irish community. I think that it's very, very important that such a venue be available to people to gather, to foster and celebrate pride. I think as well, our Irish heritage, those who are promoting Irish culture, they're doing it with literature, theatre, music, language and sport. I've already mentioned Victoria GA were celebrating their women's victory. I also met, when I attended the Australasian Games last weekend in Perth, it was wonderful to see there are now more than 450 GA clubs abroad all over the world. And it was very significant that it was the first time the President of Ireland and the President of GA were present at an event outside Ireland. Tá áthas ar a clistol gwil an gailge fi vlá mar a gúirt mé, agus ar muicas do common gailge na Australia. Agus gwym gachrad atá iad san atá tuair táciocht den teanga, agus gachrad agus bannacht ar an ténú déanscail is fihe atá teachta níos agus tá cinse gan ar óga gar leis. May I say how delighted I am and how much I want to congratulate the upcoming 21st Danescan, which I've no doubt at all will be a marvellous success. And then Cultus Melbourne. It's, well, fair play to you. It's on a type Shinam and Ceol Garilta, Ceol de Heron. It's one of the more vibrant branches here in Australia, the Melbourne branch, and it is continuing to delight audience with their music and particularly your support of set dancing. I'm told that you have to practice for the Clare half set. Whatever it is. I must mention the many schools of native Irish dancing. We saw a wonderful exhibition at the final event we had in Perth. But this is so, there is just, I met today at a number of the receptions, those responsible for dance, and I must congratulate them on the standard that they have achieved. It's so important, you know, in the Oris we celebrate Bloomsday. Usually Sabina takes charge of that herself, but well, let's put it like this, is that she insists that it be done extensively and well. But here in Melbourne, of course, you celebrate Bloomsday, and I think that both the Bloomsday Society and Yeats Society of Victoria are instrumental in celebrating our writers. And then too the work of the Australian Irish Heritage Network, and that is Éamtas Aireachta, agus Nenta Shitsan Tovachag. And their magazine, their online magazine Tinton, what a very good choice of term, nearly Tinton mar the Hinton vein. They continue to explore the Irish legacy in Australia and enlighten us as to what it is meant to be Australian Irish in the 21st century. Now there are many, many people here who will in fact actually be using the modern technology to tell the people of home how wonderful the weather is here. So, would you please stop telling them untruth and just tell them that it was cloudy with the likelihood of rain. I think that Melbourne has a very low attendance at other events. I just want to say thank you to so many people gathered here. It's an appropriate occasion to thank all those who celebrate Lalla Broderick every day, every single year. Well, some every day, but we will say nothing about that. I think that as well as that, may I congratulate the organisers of the Melbourne Festival, but everyone associated with what is one of the largest turnouts for St. Patrick's Day every year. I've had the opportunity of meeting already some members of the Irish-Australian Chamber of Commerce, and very particularly the younger people. And really, this is the way it's going. Quite frankly, there's been a huge enthusiasm from officials I've met in Australia, in that they use Ireland more as their bridge to Europe, and they're being available for Irish business and Irish economic expansion through Australia into the Asian market. There are very, very many useful discussions that we've had that are very, very promising. I'm really, really pleased at something wonderful I thought as well. I had 56 companies travelling with me. There are altogether 300 Irish businesses who are active in Australia, 130 of them who are located here. And there are about 50 Australian companies working through in Ireland. But there were 21 of the 56 were coming for the first time, and they were being assisted by members of the Irish community who were mentoring them, telling them how, in fact, actually, to what questions they would be asked and how they would deal with particular circumstances. May I say that that's a great act of solidarity from Irish people to Irish people, and it will be to the benefit of both Ireland and Australia. So I want to wish them well. Gan Eilib. And then I also visited, as I've said, something that's very important in relation to the Irish people in Australia, the Irish-Australian Support and Resource Bureau. Now, I have to say that when we visited them, I met some of its most senior members. They are people who are at the very essence of Irishness. We should remember that the Ireland, for example, of the 1950s, in which some of them came, was an island in which 50,000 people a year left, 250,000 people between 1955 and 60. They went on some of the longest journeys, and they're people to whom we have a special obligation. And I repeat my request that all of you in your own way do everything possible to assist such organisations as the Irish-Australian Support and Resource Bureau. I take the opportunity to thank them again. I was speaking to them in Irish, so Irish Jerem, ta maharave puiakasach and made it fit the Chivianav, the Cosmointer Nairin Halyar, is Ganaire Libis Banacht Duntaki. The people of Ireland take pride in the contribution of all the members of the Irish community gathered here today, from all walks of life, Elokano, business, politics, culture, and the professions and in sport. And I congratulate you on your contribution to your city and your state. Now, sport is, of course, very important. You'll notice that the close connection between Ireland and Australia, as we qualified in soccer by the most difficult route possible. And I was quite delighted that they aggregate 3-2, which means that, in fact, actually, I'd like to think that Martin O'Neill was, in fact, actually had something in mind, that he was imitating Australia in his preparations. And I so wish our team well as we go on and as Australia goes on. Now, I want to finish as well by simply saying this. In contemporary terms, the construction of identity is something quite complex. People take different aspects of their experience. But as part of the global Irish diaspora, our Irish in Australia have done much, so much, to shape the country they left behind. And Ireland's relationship with its diaspora. I mentioned the 100,000 letters a month that came home in the 1880s. How often people in Australia have assisted Ireland, those whom they left behind. How very effectively they were helping during the time of the recent, let us call it, economic contraction of 2007. But equally how they continue to help by enabling the best and brightest of young people who are setting up their businesses to some of the most expanding markets in the world. I want to thank them for that, but very particularly for being together an cuian a bhfuil si bh Genevieve Ireacht gan gachrad a bhíocht a teaslus na daoine bacáirithe iad san faoi cosmuinte na gcóiliúdar, iad san a chuairt slán. It is so important. It is, in the end of the day, not as individuals that we live, but we carry with us traces of our past. We carry with us reflections of our community, the best aspirations for the future of our people. And we do it together. When that phrase I used when I returned the visit to the United Kingdom, Fui Scor Kela Awaran Nadine, it is in the shadow of each other we all live. I want to say I wish you health and happiness as you live together in the shadow of each other. And I congratulate all of you for the expanded vision you have of what it means to be Irish, to live responsibly in a global community where everybody and every living person matters. Goramila Mahaki, Berbanach, thank you.